My wife got an STD at her friend's wedding, then had the nerve to demand I pay for her meds, so I divorced her and let the truth torch her reputation. Hey Reddit, so I, 34 male, and my wife Murphy, 33 female, were married for 8 years. And not the exciting kind of 8 years either. I mean the kind where you just know whose turn it is to take out the trash without saying a word. And you're both eating cold pasta standing over the sink at 11 p.m. because neither of you felt like cooking. We weren't fireworks. We were infrastructure. Combined income around $165,000, modest retirement accounts, a 5-year plan to upgrade to a house in the suburbs. She handled the social calendar, I handled home maintenance. Holidays rotated between families, no scorecards, built to last. At least that's what I thought. I work as a project manager for a structural engineering firm. Organized, deadline-driven, don't fold under pressure. All of that became real useful later on. Murphy worked in marketing. Her entire skill set was basically making bad decisions sound like good ideas. I used to admire that about her, honestly. So when she told me about Savannah's wedding in Savannah, yeah, a girl named Savannah getting married in Savannah, I know, I didn't flinch. Savannah was one of her college friends, theater major, took 7 years to graduate, somehow landed a guy who owned a chain of vet clinics across Georgia. Murphy was locked in immediately. 2 solid weeks of dress hunting, group texts about hair and nails, the whole production. I didn't mind. A weekend alone sounded great. Order some food, watch whatever I want, maybe finally organize the garage. Married guy paradise. She flew out Thursday evening. I drove her to the airport, wrestled her overstuffed suitcase out of the trunk, kissed her at the curb. She squeezed my hand tighter than usual before walking through the doors. The weekend played out normal on the surface. She sent photos from the rehearsal dinner, ceremony shots on Saturday, classic Southern wedding stuff. She FaceTimed me that night during the after-party, around 11. Laughing, music blasting, holding the phone at that low angle nobody looks good from. Said she missed me. I told her to have fun. She blew a kiss and hung up. That was the last normal moment of my marriage. Sunday night, she came through the door looking like she'd been dragged behind the plane instead of sitting inside it. Dark circles, hair thrown up in a messy knot, moving like her body weighed twice what it should. I figured 3 days of wedding chaos just caught up with her, but there was something underneath the tiredness. This stillness that didn't match exhausted. It matched guilty. She barely made eye contact when I asked about the trip. One-word answers. Went straight to bed without touching the dinner I'd made. Over the next few days, the weirdness got worse instead of fading. She was glued to her phone, not scrolling social media, but guarding it, angling the screen away, taking calls in the bathroom with the fan running for noise cover. I caught her clearing text threads twice, and when I asked about it, she hit me with, just freeing up storage. I'd upgraded her phone myself 2 months earlier. Storage was not an issue. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never once checked her phone, never questioned where she was or who she was with. But my gut was screaming now, and I've learned the hard way that your gut doesn't lie. It just tells you stuff your brain isn't ready to deal with yet. I let it ride for a few more days, watching, taking mental notes. Then she got sick. Started with a low fever and body aches. Murphy figured she caught something on the plane, or picked up a bug at the wedding. Close quarters, recycled air, that whole excuse. She called in sick to work and set up camp on the couch with a blanket and her laptop. I brought her soup, checked her temperature every few hours, handled the groceries and laundry and everything else around the house. Full husband mode. Because that's what you do when your wife is sick. You take care of her. Even when something in the back of your mind is whispering that she doesn't deserve it. After 4 days, the symptoms weren't fading. I told her she needed to see a doctor. She pushed back, hard. Said it was just a bug, she'd be fine. That didn't track. Murphy was the type to book urgent care appointments over a hangnail. Now she suddenly didn't want medical attention for a week-long fever? I pushed harder. She finally agreed. Booked a Thursday appointment with her primary care doctor. Wouldn't let me come along. Said she didn't want me missing work for a stupid cold. In 8 years, she'd never once told me not to come to a doctor's appointment. The mole scare, the sprained ankle, the time she was sure she had strep. I was there for all of it. Now she needed privacy for a cold. Sure, Murphy. I went to work but couldn't focus. Sat through a project review meeting without absorbing a single number. My coworker Dave kept kicking my chair because I was supposedly breathing too loud. Which, dude, I'm having a crisis here, but sure, let me regulate my breathing for you. She came home looking like the floor had been pulled out from under her. Face white, hands shaking, clutching a pharmacy bag, mumbled something about antibiotics for a minor infection, and disappeared into the bedroom. At dinner, I tried again. What kind of infection? She snapped, called me controlling and overbearing. The woman who texted me 15 times a day for 8 years was suddenly accusing me of being too attentive. That was a new one. I backed off but started watching everything. Her mood swings got wild. Sweet 1 hour, ice cold the next. She stopped eating dinner with me, started going to bed at 8 p.m. She flinched when I touched her, then covered it with a fake yawn. And she'd changed her phone password. We'd always known each other's codes, and when I casually asked to use her phone because mine died, she physically pulled it away. Just use the laptop. In 8 years, she'd never refused to hand me her phone. One night I walked into the living room and found her on the couch, phone unlocked in her lap, completely zoned out. She didn't hear me come in. I caught a glimpse of a text thread before she scrambled to lock the screen. Something about "can't stop thinking about" before the display went dark. She looked up at me like a cornered animal. "Who you texting?" "Savannah. Wedding stuff. Too fast." Rehearsed. I nodded, walked into the kitchen, and stood in the dark for like 10 minutes staring at nothing. I wasn't being paranoid. I knew it then, and I know it now. A few days later, she admitted the symptoms were getting worse. Pain that wouldn't quit. Discomfort she couldn't power through anymore. She agreed to go back to the doctor without me even pushing this time, which told me whatever was happening had crossed from "maybe I can ignore this" into "I physically can't pretend anymore." She was gone 3 hours. Walked through the door looking like someone who'd just been forced to swallow the worst truth of her life. Sat down at the kitchen table, stared at her hands for a full minute, and said the words that blew my entire world apart. "I tested positive for an STD." Dead silence. My brain just locked up. I could hear the kitchen faucet dripping. Weird how time warps when your reality cracks in half. "What?" "Chlamydia." Barely above a whisper. Still wouldn't look at me. I gripped the counter until my knuckles went white. 8 years. Hadn't been with anyone else. My last STD panel 6 months ago came back clean. Both of us tested. Both clean. How? Already knew. Just wanted to see what story she'd spin. The doctor said it could have been dormant. Don't. We've both been tested. Multiple times. If this was dormant, it would have shown up years ago. You know that. The doctor knows that. Stop. She started crying. Heaving, ugly sobs. What happened in Savannah? Nothing happened. Murphy. What happened in Savannah? I wasn't thinking straight, okay? I barely even remember what happened that night. You barely remember. But you remember enough to hide your phone for 2 weeks and change your password. That's not... I was stressed. I didn't want you reading into... Reading into what? What exactly was I going to find? Silence. Then she switched gears. It didn't mean anything. It was one stupid night and I've been sick over it ever since. You've been sick because you caught something, not because you felt guilty. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk to me about fair right now? You're never here. Loud, like volume would make it true. You work 60 hours a week and I'm alone every night. And when someone actually paid attention to me, I paid for the trip, drove you to the airport, kissed you at the curb. And while I was home like an idiot, don't tell me nobody paid attention to you. She didn't have a comeback for that. But 20 minutes later, she found her nerve. Came into the kitchen holding the pharmacy bag. These antibiotics weren't cheap. Insurance barely covered them. We should split it. Let that land for a second. She wanted me to co-pay for a disease she caught in another man's bed. That's what flipped the switch. Not the cheating, not the lies, the invoice. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't go to the guest room either. I sat in my car in the parking garage and called an urgent care clinic that opened at 7 a.m. Booked the first available slot. By 7:40 the next morning, I was sitting on an exam table getting a full STD panel drawn. Told the doctor I'd been exposed through my wife's infidelity. He didn't hesitate. Started me on presumptive antibiotics right away based on confirmed partner exposure. Said the lab results would take 2 to 3 days. But with a confirmed positive spouse, protocol was to treat first and verify after. He documented everything. The timeline, the exposure, the treatment, the whole marital situation. All of it went into my medical file. Divorce was locked in before I left that clinic parking lot. Done. The question was how to protect myself before she rewrote the story. Because a woman who lies that smooth doesn't start telling the truth when the stakes go up. She just switches to a new story. By the time I got to work, I had a plan. By lunch, I was executing it. Murphy texted me twice that morning. Careful, probing messages, checking my temperature. I replied normally, kept it short, gave her zero indication that the man she came home to last night was already gone. The version she'd see next would be holding a folder full of receipts. We were on a shared phone plan. Had been since we got married. I logged into our provider's portal and pulled her full call and text history for the wedding weekend. What I found made my jaw clench hard enough to hear the grinding. Between Thursday night and Sunday morning, she'd exchanged 53 texts and 14 calls with a number I'd never seen before. The timestamps told the whole story by themselves. Thursday at 11:47 p.m. A 21-minute call. Her first night in Savannah. She barely knew anyone there outside the wedding party, so who was getting 21 minutes on arrival night? Friday at 1:22 a.m., 28 minutes. Sunday at 2:34 a.m., just over 3 hours after our FaceTime where she told me she missed me. A 38-minute call to this same number. Let that sink in. She hung up with her husband, told him she missed him, and a few hours later dialed the guy she was about to sleep with, the night of the wedding. Sunday morning showed a cluster of rapid-fire texts right before her flight. Short bursts, quick replies, the kind of frantic texting you do when you're saying goodbye to someone you don't want to leave. She was texting him while packing her bags to come home to me. The number wasn't saved in her contacts, on purpose. She'd been careful enough to keep his name off her phone, but not careful enough to realize the call logs existed on the carrier's server anyway. She wasn't stupid, just not nearly as smart as she thought she was. People who think they're the smartest person in the room are always the easiest to catch because they don't double-check their blind spots. I ran the number through a reverse phone lookup service. Cost me $19.99. Results came back in under a minute. Corey, Savannah, Georgia, age 33, pharma sales rep for a regional medical supply company. Social media next. Murphy's accounts were scrubbed clean. She'd been careful about that, but her friends weren't. I scrolled through tagged wedding photos and found one that stopped me cold. Murphy in that burgundy dress, standing next to a tall guy with a sharp jawline and the kind of grin that says, I've never been held accountable for anything in my life. His arm was around her waist. Not her shoulder, her waist. Tagged, Corey. His profile was public, because of course it was. Shirtless gym selfies, rotating photos with different women, leaning on a leased Audi Q7 like he held the title. Bio said, grind don't stop. 2,600 followers, followed 1,900. The social media footprint of a guy who needs constant validation from strangers. Then I checked her iPad, the older model sitting on our kitchen counter, mostly used for recipes and streaming. Murphy had wiped the threads from her phone, but forgot the iPad auto-syncs messages through iCloud. The full conversation with Corey was sitting right there, untouched. I mean, she'd been super careful about her phone and completely forgot about the device 3 feet from where I eat breakfast every morning. Most of the messages were embarrassingly flirty, but one stopped me dead. I can't stop thinking about that night in Savannah. When can I see you again? Sent from my wife's device, the Monday after she got home. While I was in the kitchen making her chicken soup because she had a bug, I saved everything. Then I pulled our joint credit card statements for the wedding weekend and went line by line. What I found confirmed every suspicion and added new ones. That $385 hotel charge in downtown Savannah wasn't on the group plan. Murphy's friends were all staying at a rental house near Forsyth Park. She'd booked a separate hotel room, on our dime. There was a $94 rideshare from the wedding venue to an address I didn't recognize, probably that hotel. 2 restaurant charges, $87 and $112, at places nowhere near any wedding event. A $175 spa charge the morning after. She'd spent over $850 of our joint money on just the charges I could find that day. And that was only from one credit card statement. I had a feeling the full picture was worse. Then I called Danielle, Murphy's closest friend who'd been at the wedding. Kept it casual, told her Murphy had been off since getting back, and I was worried about her health. Danielle's a talker. Didn't take much to get her going. She was acting really weird that weekend. Danielle didn't even hesitate. She spent a lot of time with this one guy. Corey, I think. They were together constantly at the reception, and at the after-party they kept disappearing together. I figured maybe they were just stepping outside or whatever, but people noticed. Noticed how? Like, a few of the girls were whispering about it. Someone straight up said it looked inappropriate. I almost said something to Murphy, but I didn't want to start drama at Savannah's wedding. I thanked her, asked her not to mention our call to Murphy, and hung up. Then I sat in my home office in complete silence for 20 minutes. My wife hadn't made a one-time lapse in judgment. She spent an entire weekend openly chasing another man in front of people we knew, disappeared with him multiple times, slept with him, caught a disease, came home to me, and lied about every single piece of it, while I made her soup and checked her temperature and worried about her like an idiot. 2 days later, my STD results came back. Negative. The presumptive antibiotics had done their job. Doc said we caught it early enough that the treatment likely cleared the exposure before the infection could take hold. He told me to finish the full course of meds anyway, which I did, because I'm not the kind of idiot who stops antibiotics early, just because he feels fine. That afternoon, he wrote up a formal medical letter documenting the whole thing, confirmed spousal exposure to chlamydia, the treatment protocol, the timeline, and the fact that I'd had to undergo emergency medical intervention because of my wife's action. Negative result or not, that letter proved I was put at serious medical risk and had to be treated for a disease my wife brought home from another man's bed. I picked it up in person, drove straight to a Kinko's, made 3 copies, and locked the original in my desk. That letter was worth more than every screenshot combined. It proved real, documented harm, the kind of thing a court takes seriously. Murphy had forced me into emergency medical treatment. Clean bill of health didn't erase that. That evening, she'd changed into sweats, settled onto the couch with that same fake relaxed posture she'd been perfecting for weeks. I sat across from her with a manila folder. "We're done. Here's why." She looked at the folder, then at me. I watched the blood leave her face in real time. I opened it piece by piece. Phone records first, timestamps circled in red. "This is Corey's number. Pharma sales rep in Savannah. You called him for 38 minutes at 2 a.m. the night of the wedding. 3 hours after you FaceTimed me and said you missed me." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Recovered texts next. Read the "can't stop thinking about that night" message out loud. Then, the tagged photo. Her and Corey, arm around her waist. "Where did you get?" "Doesn't matter where I got it. Multiple people saw you two disappearing together all night. At Savannah's wedding, Murphy." She went through every card in the deck. Privacy violation. He pursued me. I was vulnerable. I didn't plan it. I owned it before you found out. You should be grateful. Each excuse weaker than the last, each one landing like she'd rehearsed it in the shower, and it sounded way better with the water running. Thursday night, Friday night, wedding night, all after midnight. That's not a woman being pursued. That's a woman making plans. You told me because a doctor forced your hand. Don't repackage a corner you got backed into as some kind of moral high ground. And I had to get emergency treatment because of you, by the way. Walked into a clinic the morning after you told me, and they put me on antibiotics immediately because my wife tested positive for chlamydia. You know what that feels like? Sitting on an exam table at 7 a.m. explaining to a stranger that your wife gave you an STD exposure? I came back negative, Murphy. But that doesn't undo the fact that I had to be there in the first place. That killed the room. She went white. Hadn't considered that her weekend had sent her husband to a clinic and left a medical paper trail pointing straight back to her. Then came the counseling pitch. The one mistake defense? The "won't you even fight for us" guilt flip. I let her cycle through all of it. Didn't interrupt once. Just waited. I fought for 2 weeks, Murphy. I made you soup, checked your temperature, did the laundry, worried about you every single night. While you were texting the guy who gave you chlamydia, I was fighting for us. You were the one who quit. Nothing. You had 8 years of trust in the bank, and you spent every cent of it in one weekend on a pharma rep from Savannah who drives a leased Audi. She flinched hard. Knowing his name, his job, his car, it rattled her. For the first time, she understood she was outmatched. She was dealing with someone who'd done his homework while she was busy deleting messages and hoping for the best. I told her I wanted her out of the apartment within the week. She tried refusing, but I'd already talked to an attorney by phone that afternoon. He told me to file right away for temporary exclusive possession, given the documented health risk and the ongoing lies. Murphy could stay with her parents or find her own place. But this apartment was about to become mine legally. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting in the office of that divorce attorney whose entire practice was built on high conflict cases. Former prosecutor, $475 an hour, and within the first 10 minutes, I knew he was worth every penny. I laid everything on his desk: the phone records, the screenshots, the financial charges, and the medical letter documenting my confirmed STD exposure and emergency treatment. He looked through it all without expression, then said 5 words. "Your wife handed you this." My attorney laid out the strategy and filed for temporary exclusive possession of the apartment at the same time. Our state allowed cheating to affect how assets get split. Combined with the financial stuff and the documented health exposure, we had serious ammo. His paralegal pulled statements from every card Murphy had on the account, including the secondary one she used for personal stuff. Found another $887 in charges I'd missed, more ride shares, a clothing purchase the night before the wedding, 2 ATM withdrawals in downtown Savannah. Total marital funds spent on the affair, $1,740. All documented, all traceable, our money. Spent funding her weekend with another man. Within 10 days, the court granted me exclusive possession. Murphy moved back in with her parents. I had Murphy served at her office, deliberately. Could have had her served at home where she could fall apart in private. But privacy is a luxury you lose when you spend a weekend making a spectacle of yourself at someone else's wedding. The process server walked in right after lunch when the whole floor was at their desks and the office was at peak capacity. He asked for Murphy by name at reception. They pulled her out of a team meeting in the glass-walled conference room, handed her the papers in the hallway. I know the details because my buddy Derek's wife Erin still had a friend on Murphy's floor who watched the whole thing. Said Murphy read the first page, went completely white, and had to lean against the wall. One of her coworkers asked if she was okay. She didn't answer. She called me 9 times that afternoon. Every single one went to voicemail. I listened to exactly one of them later that evening. 30 seconds of uneven breathing, then, "You're going to regret this." No sadness. Just a threat. I saved the voicemail, time-stamped it, and added it to the folder. Thanks for the evidence, Murphy. The next 5 months were a war of attrition, and Murphy fought every inch of it dirty. Her lawyer filed everything short of a missing persons report. Bogus emergency restraining order, claiming emotional abuse, motions to freeze accounts, recalculate assets, subpoena a therapist I didn't even have. None of it stuck, but each one cost me another $1,200 to defend. By the time the real threats showed up, I'd burned through $22,000 and was running on 3 hours of sleep most nights. That's the strategy in scorched earth divorce. You don't need to win motions. You just need the other side to bleed out first. The TRO hearing was where things turned. Murphy claimed emotional abuse under oath. My attorney asked if I'd ever restricted her phone access, social media, or friendships. She said yes, emphatically. He let that hang, then pulled up one exhibit, my text from the night she flew out. "Go have the best time, babe. You deserve this." Sent from the curb at departures. One text killed the entire abuse claim in 10 seconds. The judge said, on the record, that the court finds no credible basis for this petition and notes significant inconsistencies between the petitioner's sworn statements and the documented evidence. Her credibility was done, permanently, on the record, in a way no amount of marketing could fix. Corey tried reaching out once, pathetic voicemail begging me not to drag his name in. My lawyer sent back a letter promising a subpoena if he ever contacted anyone involved again. He didn't. Then came the part that almost broke me. During discovery, her attorney produced phone records of my call with Danielle and filed a motion to throw out my entire evidence folder. Witness manipulation, they called it. If the judge agreed, everything, the phone logs, the texts, the financial trail, the medical letter, all of it gets tossed. 5 months of work, gone on one ruling. There was one night I sat in my car in the garage at 2 a.m. and genuinely thought about what losing looked like. Not just the case, the apartment, the retirement accounts, the whole position I'd sacrificed to build. That was the closest I came to calling my lawyer and saying, just settle. Not because she deserved it, because I was exhausted, and the math was starting to look cruel no matter which way it landed. But I didn't call. Went upstairs, made coffee at 3 a.m., and reread every screenshot in the folder. The Thursday call, the Friday call, the wedding night call 3 hours after she told me she missed me, the pharmacy bag, and the audacity of asking me to split the bill. I wasn't tired anymore. The hearing came that Friday. Phone records from a shared marital account were legally available to both parties. Data from a shared household device was within my rights. A casual call to a mutual friend wasn't witness tampering. Judge ruled in our favor on every count. Evidence stayed in. That's the part nobody tells you about divorce. It's not one dramatic fight. It's months of smaller fights, any one of which could flip the whole board. Meanwhile, Murphy was running a full PR campaign, doing what she does best, marketing, repackaging reality into something prettier. She called my mother and sobbed about how I was throwing away our marriage over one mistake, framed it like I was being unreasonable, like forgiving her was the obvious choice, and my refusal was the actual problem. My mom listened for about 3 minutes and said, "Murphy, you brought a disease home to my son. You need to call your own mother right now." Then she called me and asked if I was eating enough. That's my mom. Never misses the point. Never forgets what matters. She also drained $6,200 from our joint checking, the one we hadn't fully separated yet. Wrote herself a check claiming she needed first and last month's rent. Technically legal since the account was still joint, but my attorney filed an emergency motion the same day. Judge froze the remaining funds. That $6,200 came out of her share in the final settlement, but for 72 hours I was staring at a checking balance that made my stomach drop. Murphy cycled through every emotional gear she had, sobbing apologies and handwritten notes left with my doorman. Volcanic rage about how I was cruel and vindictive. Love bombing. Showed up at my office with lunch acting like nothing happened. My receptionist turned her away. Then full victim mode on social media? A long caption about, "When someone you trusted destroys your life and the people who should support you choose silence." 30+ likes, a bunch of sympathetic comments from people who didn't know the full story. Then Savannah dropped a public comment. "Girl, stop. You cheated on your husband at my wedding and gave him an STD. Everyone here knows it. Delete this." Post was gone in 20 minutes, but the screenshot wasn't. Danielle sent it to me. Derek's wife sent it to 3 other people. That comment became the public record of what happened, and it made its way through their entire social circle in under a day. After that, the sympathy dried up for good. Nobody wanted to publicly defend Murphy and get corrected with receipts. Savannah and I had stayed in touch, which I know sounds weird, but she was honestly more pissed about the whole thing than I was, and I was pretty damn pissed. She confirmed what I suspected about Corey. He had a pattern. Specifically went after married women because he figured it meant less attachment. He's a predator in dress shoes, she told me. She removed Murphy from their college group chat without warning. When Murphy texted asking why, Savannah waited 3 days and sent, "You know what you did, and you did it at my wedding. I need space, and I don't think it has an expiration date." My guy friends locked in right away. Ty called the night he found out and said 2 words. What's needed? No emotional processing. No, have you considered her perspective? Just what's needed. I told him gym partner. He said done. We've been lifting 3 days a week since. Derek and Aaron dropped off food at my place. Aaron, who'd been in Murphy's spin class for 2 years, looked me dead in the eye and said, "What she did is unforgivable." Coming from someone in Murphy's circle, that hit different. Murphy tried to get ahead of it. Texted the whole friend group her version. The one mistake, he won't forgive me, I'm heartbroken at it. Might have worked if Savannah's comment hadn't already made the rounds with screenshots attached. Screenshots move faster than spin. The women planning the Scottsdale trip quietly removed her from the chat. She showed up to a friend's birthday, and nobody saved her a seat. Walked into brunch, and the table cleared in minutes. She couldn't outrun documented reality with a sad story. Every spin attempt ran into someone who'd already seen the receipts. Word spread through her office after the serving incident, and she got quietly pulled off client-facing accounts and shelved on internal projects. In marketing, getting shifted from client work to internal stuff is basically career hospice. No official demotion, no paper trail, just a quiet sidelining that tells everyone exactly where you stand. 3 months later, she voluntarily left the company. I'm sure that resignation was about as voluntary as a confession at gunpoint. The final hearing was a Tuesday in October. Wait, no, I think it was a Wednesday actually. Doesn't matter. My attorney had built what he called a closed loop. Every piece of evidence organized, cross-referenced, and laid out clean. Phone records, recovered texts, financial statements showing $1,740 in marital funds spent during the affair weekend. My medical letter documenting confirmed STD exposure and emergency treatment. Corey's voicemail. The failed restraining order with the judge's denial language on record. Start to finish, 0 gaps. Murphy's attorney made her final play, arguing the marriage had been falling apart for years, and calling the affair a symptom of mutual neglect. Tried painting me as emotionally distant and obsessed with work, someone who'd driven his wife to seek connection elsewhere. My attorney took about 60 seconds to take that apart. Pointed out I'd funded the Savannah trip, kept steady employment the whole marriage, shared household duties equally, had 0 history of misconduct, and had personally nursed Murphy back to health when she came home sick, from the disease she caught while cheating. Then he pulled up the text where Murphy told Corey, "I can't stop thinking about that night," and asked the court whether that sounded like a woman suffering from emotional neglect or someone making a willing, enthusiastic choice. Her attorney dropped the neglect argument, didn't bring it up again. The ruling came down heavy in my favor. Fault state, no kids, individual incomes close enough that alimony was never a strong argument anyway. Her side pushed for mediation in the final stretch. Her lawyer knew the credibility ruling from the TRO hearing had poisoned their whole position, and a judge who'd already caught Murphy lying wasn't giving her any benefit of the doubt. We mediated for 2 sessions, and because they had nothing left to work with, the terms landed right where my attorney predicted. I kept the apartment, my retirement accounts, and the majority of our investment portfolio. Murphy walked away with her personal savings, her car, and the full weight of her own decision. No alimony. My lawyer hammered the financial waste argument home hard, and the court agreed that funneling marital money into an affair was a breach of duty. Murphy signed the final agreement in my attorney's conference room on a Thursday afternoon without making eye contact with anyone in the room. But the legal stuff wasn't the final scene. That came 3 weeks later. I'd been cleaning out the apartment, boxing up the last of her things she hadn't picked up. Books, shoes, some framed photos she'd forgotten, probably hoping I'd call and give her an excuse to come over. I taped the boxes shut and left them in the building lobby. She came Saturday morning. I was walking back from a run when I saw her standing next to the boxes, looking smaller than I remembered. She'd lost weight. Hair was different. Shorter, less put together. Wearing clothes I didn't recognize, which meant she'd moved into a part of her life I had 0 involvement in. Good. She looked up when I walked in. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Can we talk? Quiet. No performance this time. No tears ready to go. Just a woman standing next to the boxed-up leftovers of her old life. There's nothing to talk about, Murphy. I know you probably hate me. I don't hate you. Hate takes energy, and you're not worth the investment anymore. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That line landed harder than anything I'd said during the entire 5-month war. Hatred she could work with. Hatred means the other person still cares. Indifference is the real death sentence for someone like Murphy, because it means you've been moved from important to irrelevant. I lost everything. Not fishing for sympathy. Just stating inventory. My friends won't return my calls. Savannah cut me out completely. I had to leave my job. I moved back in with my parents. And Corey, she stopped, blocked you. I already knew. Savannah told me weeks earlier. Corey ghosted Murphy about a month after the divorce went public. Blocked her number, scrubbed her from his socials, vanished like he never existed. The man who goes after married women because he thinks it means less drama wasn't interested once she was actually single and carrying real-world baggage. Murphy traded an 8-year marriage for a guy who wouldn't even answer her text once the novelty wore off. If that isn't karma hand-delivering a package with a signature required, I don't know what is. She nodded, then shifted gears. And there it was, the real reason she came. I've been looking at apartments, but the deposits are... I'm between jobs right now, and my parents' place isn't sustainable. I was wondering if you could help me with first month's rent, just as a loan. I'd pay it back. The whole performance, the quiet voice, the humility, the I lost everything rundown was the setup. The punchline was a check. 5 months of lies, manipulation, fake abuse claims, and a wrecked marriage. And she was standing in my lobby asking me to fund her fresh start. Unbelievable. Except completely believable, because that's exactly who she is. No, she blinked, jaw tightened. The real Murphy, the one underneath the humble act, showing up for just a second. You can afford it. You kept everything. The apartment, the accounts. I'm living with my parents and you can't even help me with 1 month? You're confusing what I can do with what I owe you. I don't owe you anything, Murphy. Not $1. Not 1 minute. Not one more second of my life cleaning up something you broke. Whatever she'd rehearsed in the car on the way over. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She'd expected the old me, the one who would have written the check just to avoid conflict. That guy doesn't live here anymore. She picked up the first box. Struggled with the weight. Old me would have grabbed the other end. New me watched. For what it's worth, she said from the doorway. I know I destroyed everything, and I know sorry doesn't fix it. It doesn't. She carried the boxes out in 2 trips. I held the door but didn't help. She looked back from her car like she had something left to say. She didn't. She drove away. I went upstairs and made breakfast. That was 3 months ago. Apartment's fully mine. Repainted, new sheets. Nothing sits where it used to. Been hitting the gym with Ty, cooking real meals, reconnecting with friends I lost during the marriage years. Made a steak au poivre last week that would have been the best thing Murphy ever tasted. Not that she'll ever know. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.